Okay, good afternoon. My name is Chris Smith. I'm a member of Congress. I'm a member of Congress from New Jersey. I'm serving 46 years in the U.S. House of Representatives, and I just can't say how grateful I am to everyone who is here and for all of you for being here as well. This is an extremely important issue, combating human trafficking. And again, your presence and the presence of people who have made all the difference in the world behind me, who will be speaking shortly. And I do hope you can really get their message out and get their, don't listen to us, talk to these victims now, advocates who are just amazing. I want to do special thanks to my good friend and colleague, Congressman Kweisi Mfume of Maryland, for his steadfast leadership, co-sponsorship of the Frederick Trafficking Victims Protection and Prevention Act of H.R. 1144. We have been working as a team, as friends, for many months, even years, on combating human trafficking, and it is great to work with him on this important bill that we have before us. I want to express special thanks as well to Mike Johnson, the Majority Leader Steve Scalise, for scheduling, and they will schedule the debate and the vote on H.R. 1144 within the next couple of weeks. We've had ongoing discussions. It's coming up. It's coming to the floor, and I'm so grateful for that. And we're going to get this bill into law. I guarantee it. We've worked closely with Frederick Douglass's great-great-grandson, Kenneth Morris, who sadly could not join us today, but who helped us double down on the prevention side, which is very heavily embedded in this bill. And we worked with them on the last bill named after Frederick Douglass that was signed into law by President Trump, called the Frederick Douglass Trafficking Victims Protection Act. And I especially want to recognize and thank the amazing and heroic and extraordinarily compassionate survivor leaders who helped write this bill. We didn't write it, they did. You will hear from them in a couple of moments, but they are the ones, through their lived experience, through the wisdom that they've accumulated over time. They know what has to be done, and they have been very, very, I think, assertive in a very positive way to make sure those important provisions are in this bill and other bills that have made their way through the Congress and at the state legislative side. This legislation is of, by, and for them, to help heal, restore, and to empower. Last year we celebrated the 25th anniversary of the Trafficking Victims Protection Act of 2000, a comprehensive bipartisan landmark piece of legislation that I authored, but it was bipartisan. We did it as a team, and it became the cornerstone of U.S. as well as global efforts to combat human trafficking. That legislation was also inspired by survivors, including some who are right here today, and it created the U.S. government's whole-of-government approach, scores of new programs and initiatives to combat human trafficking, both here, domestically, as well as overseas, all under the 3Ps network of, framework, I should say, to protect victims, prosecute traffickers, and to the extent possible, prevent trafficking from occurring in the first place. Over the years, I have authored 4 other laws to combat trafficking in 03, 05, 2016, and as I just mentioned, the Frederick Douglass Act back in 2019. When the TVBA, and I will get more into the victim side in a moment, but it did radically reform the criminal code to treat exploited persons as victims. Heretofore, up until passage, many of the victims were treated as perpetrators of crime, and that was an unbelievable false look at what was really happening. That's changed completely. Some of our state laws haven't caught up, but the federal law says they are victims and treat them that way. Go after the perpetrators of these crimes. I also would point out that if you are under the age of 14 when you're trafficked, you can get up to life imprisonment through this. If you are over 14, and not attain the age of 18, and of course after 18, where there's an element of force, fraud, or coercion, you can get 20 years, and often that is what is meted out. As of 2024, and we are awaiting the 2025 stats, there have been 5,200 traffickers who have been federally convicted under the TVPA and are serving very long prison sentences, including Ghislaine Maxwell, who got 25 years. Look at the document, look at what she was charged with and convicted under. It was the TVPA. Epstein was also charged, but he died, of course, as we all know, before some justice could be meted out on him. He was charged pursuant to that law. It created the TVPA, the Office to Monitor and Combat Trafficking. I won't go through all of that. And many states, and God bless them, also replicated and did their own trafficking laws. So we have more prosecutors, more people engaged. In my New Jersey, we have a very, very good law. And Gina Cavallo, who will speak to you momentarily, she is from New Jersey, just an amazing advocate. And on the state level as well as federal level, like everyone here, they have made sure that we have more prosecutors, not just the U.S. attorneys and others that are doing this, and of course more support services. What will H.R. 1144 do? We have copies of it for you, but just in a nutshell, fully support survivor-informed programs like the Frederick Douglass Survivors Employment and Education Program, ensure robust prosecutions. You know, U.S. attorneys do have prosecutorial discretion. We're admonishing them, go and get these people. Make it a priority. And that's what this legislation will seek to further do, enhance sustainable child trafficking and prevention education. In the 2019 bill, we had legislation to help the K through 12, the children, to make them situationally aware what the traffickers do, how they deceive, how they get young people on drugs, all the methods that are employed to deceive them into exploiting them. This would, in hopefully every high school, elementary school, and everything, have the teachers as well as the individuals very well informed on what to look out for, and this will do this in a big time, and we have speakers who will speak to that today. Strengthen partnerships among federal, state, and local authorities, and it also would reauthorize the International Megan's Law. And I'll be very brief on that, but Megan Kanka lived in my old hometown of Hamilton. 1994, a convicted pedophile crossed the street, said, hey, come on in and see my puppy. And he brutally raped her and murdered her, and then actually went out there and said, have you seen Megan? Was handing out flyers. Just a disgusting individual. He's in prison. It has led to Megan's Law in every state and the District of Columbia and everywhere else in our country. But what about those convicted pedophiles who hop on a plane and go to other countries to exploit, to buy, to rent a child for a week or two or for longer? This says you can't do it. If you're going to travel, we can't stop them from traveling after they get out of prison. We will notify the countries of destination, and if you lie, you get up to 10 years in prison. And as a backup, on your passport is now stamped with a statement that says the bearer has been convicted of a crime against children, sexual crime against children. Yeah. So at the border security people could say, whoa, you're not coming in. And there have been well over 40,000 notices made, and a lot of these guys, and almost 99.999% are men who have this pathological sickness to exploit children. They're being turned away. So it takes a lot of the secrecy out of child sex tourism, and that has some chilling effect. I'd like to now introduce my good friend and colleague, Kweisi Mfume.
Thank you, everybody. I'm Kweisi Mfume of Maryland, Baltimore in particular, and I just can't say enough about Chris Smith. So if you allow me, thank you. If you allow me just a point of personal privilege, I want to say some things about the legislation, but I would be remiss if I did not talk about Chris and his heart and how he has been after this over and over and over again, and how great it's been to work with him. People oftentimes look at Washington as being dysfunctional, that Democrats and Republicans cannot and will not work together. So Chris and I have defied that on a number of different pieces of legislation, which we got passed.
That's right. That's right.
And we're here today on this very important piece. So he's just been doing this for a long time without a lot of fanfare. I'm happy, quite frankly, just to be his partner in this regard and to co-author and co-sponsor the legislation that we're talking about today. I would also be remiss if I did not talk about, speak to, highlight, and be redundant about mentioning the fact that there's so many groups of individuals here. They're all behind us. You'll hear from some of them shortly. They are doing God's work. They do this day in and day out. Many of them could be doing other things, but they've sort of pledged and dedicated their hearts and their lives to trying to help people become, not to become victims, and to help people to understand some of the early warning signs. Please applaud all of them. You won't hear from everyone, but I want you to know they're all here for the same cause. Now, Two quick things. Why the Frederick Douglass Act? Frederick Douglass, as most of us know, was a slave. He got out of slavery. He taught himself how to read and write. He learned 7 languages. But one thing that he never forgot, and that was what happened to him and how cruel and evil it was to be moved around with other persons simply because of their race. Frederick Douglass worked in Maryland for a long time, lived there not far from my district, and had one thing that he never let go of. He always thought that it was so immoral for people to be trafficked, whether they were slaves, whether they were women, whether they were children, that this notion of bondage was working against the American principle, and he spent so much of the rest of his life fighting for that. As you heard, his great-great-great-grandson wanted to be here today, is not, but has worked on this legislation and worked in the communities around America to support Chris in this effort and to support me. So I just want to make sure that we understand that it is not an accident that this is named the Frederick Douglass Bill, because we stand for the principles that he stood for. All trafficking is wrong. All bondage is wrong. And the last thing that I just want to simply mention, if I might, because Chris did such a great job on talking about the aspects of this bill that are important both nationally and internationally, is to talk about in many, many ways the heart and the soul of what this is all about. This is about nameless, faceless individuals who are not here today, who may never see this press conference, who are just a step away from being snatched or tricked or lured into some sort of evil situation. What you do and why this is so important is because this bill also finds a way to reach down, as Chris said, into schools, elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, to start teaching particularly young girls and women what to look out for, what are the signs, what to do, what not to do. We can't say enough for local law enforcement, who in many respects has been on top of this, but we need more people to talk to more people and to reach more potential victims out there. And so it's a deep, deep honor and pleasure to be here with you, to fight for this. As Chris announced, we're actually going to get a vote on this next week. And we hope to be victorious. Thank you so much.
My name is Gina Cavallo, survivor leader, educator, and vice president of the New Jersey Coalition Against Human Trafficking, PAC Survivor Advisory Council, Sex Trade Survivor Caucus, Jay Benke, and co-chair of American Academy of Pediatrics Against Human Trafficking. I'd like to also acknowledge Sisters of the Good Shepherd, Fran and Marilyn, and all of you that have been here that brought us to where we are today. Today, I do not stand before you as a politician or a policy expert. I stand before you as a human being, one who has lived the cost of inaction, injustice, and systems that fail to protect the vulnerable. I was once labeled a criminal instead of recognized as a victim of human trafficking. I was once left to rebuild a life with no roadmap, few resources, and wounds that no one could see. And even after I escaped the trafficking, the punishment did not end. I carried the weight of stigma, trauma, barriers, long after the abuse stopped. This is the reality for far too many survivors in our country. No child ever dreams of being exploited, of being raped, sold, or used as commodity. Yet this is happening to children across the nation every single day. It happened to me. This is why I stand here today, speaking directly to leaders on both sides of the aisle. We need you to come together and support H.R. 1144, the Frederick Douglass Trafficking Victims Prevention Protection Reauthorization Act, for prevention so no other child is forced to endure this crime, for prosecution so traffickers and exploiters are held fully accountable, for protection so survivors are not left to carry a lifetime of trauma alone. The systems meant to protect, many of us failed, but today we have a chance to rebuild them. Every delay matters. Every lapse in service matters. Every lost program matters, because every gap in protection creates an opening for exploitation. This is just not another bill. It is a promise. This is not a partisan issue. It is a moral one. Human trafficking preys on the vulnerable, the unseen, and the unheard. And as long as even one person is exploited, none of us can truly call ourselves free. I want to acknowledge Congressman Chris Smith, tireless, relentless leader who, as Congressman Mfume said, does not look for the spotlight. He is the most humble human being that is doing this work of politics, and his heart is so true. And he has led us in this fight for decades after decades. I'd like to also acknowledge Congressman Mfume for your tireless leadership and bipartisan partnership. I also want to thank both Mary McDermott Noonan and Mary Vigil for their support and tireless efforts. Tegan, Kevin Malone, Speaker Johnson, Majority Leader Scalise, and our President Trump, because I believe that their hearts are to want to make some action now and movement to stop this from happening to another human being. Their example reminds us that protecting the vulnerable must always arise above politics. And as we honor the legacy of Frederick Douglass, let us remember that this freedom is not only escaping captivity, this freedom is being believed. Freedom is being protected. Freedom is having humanity restored. So today, I ask you to choose action over apathy, compassion over politics, justice over silence. We are here today. I am here today because I have been called for such a time as this. All of us have. And it's not what we say, but the action that is behind our words. One of the most important people that I have not mentioned, that's so important to my heart, close to my heart, and in all the work that I do, he has called me to a place today, and that is God. And I am here not only speaking from my lived experience, but for those who are no longer with us, for our brothers and sisters who have been victimized of this crime against humanity, that have no voice, that are no longer with us. Let us be the generation that ended the silence, closed the gaps, and proved that never again was not just words. We are asking, without further delay, the House to vote, hotline in the Senate, and our President to sign. Thank you so much. I would like at this time to introduce Marcel Vanderwatt, President and CEO of National Center on Sexual Exploitation, Advocacy. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Gina, just for sharing your faith and just continuing to showing up every day. I really appreciate that. My name is Marcel Vanderwatt, and I'm the President and CEO of the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. So for the past 60 years, the National Center on Sexual Exploitation has worked to untangle the web of sexual exploitation. And human trafficking is fundamentally woven into every dimension of these issues. Congressman Chris Smith, as a former law enforcement officer in South Africa, I've just drawn so much inspiration and encouragement just from your work and your life. As far back as 2004, when frontline law enforcement officers, not just in South Africa, but in countless other countries in the world, started studying the annual U.S. Trafficking Persons Report as a principal diplomatic tool to move the needle on human trafficking. So many of us have heard about your life and work, Congressman Smith, so thank you for that. As a former organized crime and human trafficking investigator who has worked in this space for at least 25 years, I have not only personally infiltrated these criminal networks, but can say with confidence that survivors have experienced what most people only theorize about. Survivors truly understand the internal mechanisms of human trafficking as a complex system. And they, survivors, are the ones who continue to pave and repave the way between theory and practice. And HR 1144, why we are all here today, is the result of real-world experiences translated into real-world solutions. While Congressman Chris Smith's Trafficking Victims Protection Act has led to the convictions of over 5,000 human traffickers and the freedom of tens of thousands of victims and survivors of traffickers since its enactment 25 years ago, it's so important to underscore that there is an ever-present dark number of human beings falling prey to consumer-level demand. These are people who purchase sexual access to women and children, overwhelmingly men, the same people that creates the market forces for traffickers and pimps to exist, part of the ecosystem, and therefore just survivors informing this understanding of what this looks like as a complex system and what it needs to look like in order to be freedom from the clutches of traffickers. And this is why the Frederick Trafficking Victims Prevention and Protection Reauthorization Act of 2025 matters. It really breathes life into a response system that should look like remarkably similar to the system that perpetrates these crimes. We are talking about transnational organized crime. We just had a conversation now with parents that are here today that lost a 15-year-old due to sextortion. All of these things are fundamentally interconnected and intertwined. And HR 1144 really breathes life into, as Congressman Smith mentioned, the piece, protection, prevention, and prosecution. And not to forget the importance of partnerships, and that partnerships means zero without actual participation. So at this real moment, we need Congress, and we need everybody that can make this happen for this to be signed into law, to actually participate. Finally, in honor of Frederick Douglass's fight for human dignity and echoing the calls of survivors and leaders here today, the National Center on Sexual Exploitation calls for the immediate passage of HR 1144. Thank you, Congressman Smith, Congressman Mfume, and everyone who continues to show up in the arena. Thank you. Yeah, right. Okay, so I've got the honor of introducing Holly Nadal, Survivor Leader and Director of Advocacy and Engagement at Three Strands Global Foundation. Holly.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, and thank you to Representative Smith and Mfume for your leadership, and to everyone here working to strengthen the fight against human trafficking. My name is Holly Nadel. I'm the Director of Advocacy and Engagement at Three Strands Global Foundation, and I'm also a survivor of human trafficking. I also want to acknowledge our amazing, fearless leader here, Ashley Bryant, our CEO, that always stands with survivors. Allies in this space are critically important, and she has been by my side every step of this way, so I just wanted to acknowledge her today. When we focus on prevention and prosecution and liberation, what is often missing in this conversation is about what happens when systems fail to recognize victims and the consequences of that failure. In my own experience, I was not identified as a victim. I was treated as a criminal. Like many survivors, I was arrested, detained, and punished for actions that were a direct result of my exploitation. Instead of protection, I was processed through systems that deepened the harm. This is why the non-punishment principle under the TVPA is so critical. Survivors should not be penalized for crimes they were compelled to commit as part of their exploitation. This still happens every day across the United States, especially in complex cases involving financial exploitation, fraud, or hidden coercion. Non-punishment is the foundation of victim protection. It ensures accountability is placed where it belongs. Well, I was fortunate to be granted a full and unconditional presidential pardon by President Trump in the very same week that President Trump also thankfully signed the Trafficking Survivors Relief Act into law, which provides vacatur and expungement for survivors like myself. The truth is, though, is that that relief should have never been necessary. Survivors should not be criminalized in the first place. And that is why H.R. 1144 is so important. It strengthens the framework that we rely on, but implementation is everything. To truly deliver on protection, we need essential safeguards, consistent victim identification across all systems, legal protections that are accessible in practice, not just on paper, survivor-informed policies that reflect the full complexity of trafficking today. At Three Strands Global Foundation, we see every day how criminal records for forced action significantly hinder survivors' efforts to rebuild their lives. If we are serious about ending human trafficking, we must fulfill our responsibility to ensure survivors are not criminalized by the very systems meant to protect them. I stand here today not only as a survivor, but as someone who has seen both the failures and the potential of our systems. Through legislation like H.R. 1144, we have the opportunity to move closer to a truly survivor-centered response, one that prioritizes protection over punishment and justice over convenience. Thank you. And with that, is my absolute pleasure to introduce Kevin Malone, Senior Advisor at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and co-founder of the U.S. Institute Against Human Trafficking.
First of all, I want to thank the media. Thank you for being here today. I'm serious, and it's a heartfelt thanks because you are part of the solution. You can help us make this issue, this evil, known throughout the country. So thank you, media, for being here. Please continue to follow this and to do something about it like you're doing today. I'm honored to be here standing with Chris Smith, Congressman, as he fights for human trafficking, in particular assisting him in his efforts to help human traffic survivors. Congressman Smith, as most of you know, was elected in 1981 to Congress. He's been a warrior fighting against trafficking for 45 years. I mean, he is amazing. And he's, as someone else said, he's very humble. He doesn't like, but he needs to be recognized for the warrior that he is. He authored the life-changing landmark legislation in 2000 known as the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, the TVPA. Congressman Smith is a champion for human rights. He is a man of convictions, and he stands for what is best for our country. And at times he differs with his own political party, but he'll stand up and speak out for what is right. In 2014, he passed Megan's Law. He helped pass it, and then Chris helped the reauthorization of TPA in 2021. And we're here today to encourage the U.S. Congress to prioritize the bill H.R. 1144, the Frederick Douglass Trafficking Victims Prevention and Protection Reauthorization Act. Make it a priority to vote on this bill on the House floor. As was mentioned, I work at HHS. I'm the Senior Advisor on Human Trafficking. I was in Major League Baseball for 17 years. I retired from the Los Angeles Dodgers about 20 years ago, and God called me into this fight to fight for kids that are being trafficked, sex and labor trafficked, as well as those kids now that are being abused through technology-facilitated abuses. We have a real problem in America with kids being targeted by predators, and I'll talk about that in a minute. At the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, we see human trafficking as a domestic public health and human services issue affecting communities across this country, urban, suburban, rural, and tribal. And often it's hidden in plain sight. If you knew that most schools that implement human trafficking prevention education are identifying active trafficking situations among students and sometimes even amongst families connected to those schools. Would you want more schools to have access to these programs? Because this is what we are seeing. Prevention education is not theoretical. It is leading to real identification and early intervention. If you knew that much of the trafficking happening in the United States is domestic, let's not forget that. We always hear about the international trafficking. We've got a major problem in the United States with American kids being bought and sold for sex or to be labor trafficked. We need to fight for our kids here. We always forget about American kids. We have a problem. One stat, and don't quote me on this, but I use it sometimes. I've read it. American men are the #1 consumers of buying sex, of raping kids in the world. Yes. We have a problem, men in America. Why in the world? How evil is it to pay to rape a child? And I'm not talking about just minors, just under 18. I'm talking about infants and toddlers. We are living in evil times. We have to stand up and fight for our kids, and we have to get this bill passed. Yes. We have to.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Because traffickers are not waiting. They're using technology, they're using relationships and moments of vulnerability to exploit individuals wherever they are. That is why prevention education matters. When young people understand how grooming works, when educators and community members know the warning signs, and when programs are responsive and accessible, we can interrupt exploitation earlier, sometimes before it fully takes hold. But awareness alone is not enough. If you knew that one of the strongest predictors of whether a survivor is exploited is whether they can achieve economic stability, would you invest in pathways to jobs, to education, and long-term self-sufficiency? Because that is what we hear directly from survivors. They want jobs, they want skills, they want the ability to support themselves and their families, they want stability. And without that stability, the risk of re-exploitation remains high. With stability, everything changes. Providing sustained access to employment, education, and life skills support is not just about recovery. It is one of the most effective forms of prevention. We also know the importance of strong national infrastructure. Resources like the National Human Trafficking Hotline and public awareness efforts that help identify victims, connect them to services, and keep pace with the evolving threats, including those driven by technology. Taken together, these practical, evidence-informed strategies equip communities with prevention tools, identify exploitation earlier, and ensure survivors have a real pathway to independence. At HHS, we remain committed to advancing approaches that reflect what we know, that works: prevention, early intervention, and long-term stability. America, listen up. Our nation's children are facing a national crisis. Loud and clear, our children are under attack. Our youth are being targeted online by predators and pedophiles. These predators commonly use apps and platforms that kids use: social media, gaming chats, messaging apps. Sextortion is off the charts. I mean, we've got to stop this. We've got to fight for our kids. Child exploitation is increasing rapidly. It's scaling. Online exploitation. NetMec is receiving tens of millions of tips about child exploitation. In early 2000s, it was just 100,000. Now we're talking about tens of millions of attacks on our kids. Congress, it's your duty. It's your responsibility to protect Americans, especially kids, from sex trafficking, labor trafficking, and tech-facilitated abuses. Congress, you have to do the right thing. This is not about politics. It's not about some lobbyist putting pressure on you. It's about protecting children. If we can't protect our children, you're a failure. Congress, as I said, is your duty. Failure to protect our kids is a catastrophic failure. Enough with the excuses. Let's pass H.R. 1144. And I'll close with this. You guys know that budgets reflect priorities.
Amen. Come on with it. Come on.
This legislation that we have, that Chris is working on passing 1144, it provides $31 million for HHS to support victims of human trafficking. But the scale of trafficking is different today. It's fueled by technology that enables constant access to victims. It dwarfs our current response capacity. We are no longer guessing. We know where the risks are. We know how exploitation occurs and what interventions are effective. The gap is not knowledge, it's funding and action. This is a critical opportunity for Congress to invest strategically and decisively to begin to level what has been an uneven fight. If you look at the budget of OTIP, that's the office that I work with over at ACF. They have one of the smallest budgets that Congress appropriates. $30 million to protect all American kids and adults. It's been flatlined for 5 years. We need more money from Congress to fight for Americans, adults and children. We're doing the best we can with what we've got, but Congress, wake up. You're funding all these other things. Let's fund the protection and the help for children and the technology facilitated abuses. There's no one addressing that. We get calls, or OTIP gets calls from families and from victims that have been sextorted or they've been somehow been exploited online. They don't know where to go. We need the resources to provide services and help for these kids and their families. So I'll close with that. I'm just, I get a little worked up. I apologize. I used to do it in baseball and it was okay. I don't know. Chris, I don't know if it's okay anymore, but I really mean it seriously. Thank you, media, for being here. You're very, very important in this fight. So thank you for being here.
Kevin, thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris. Oh, it's my pleasure to introduce the next warrior that's been fighting trafficking for a while. Her name is Jan Edwards. She's the president and founder of Paving the Way Foundation, and she's a real fighter. And I'm glad to be a friend of hers and working with her. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Whew, okay. Thank you, Congressman Smith and Congressman Mfume, really for your tireless work on this. And every single person standing behind me and every single person in front of me and every single person that's listening to this right now and will be listening to it, thank you for paying attention. You're listening. Good afternoon. My name's Jan Edwards and I'm the president of Paving the Way Foundation. Did you know it takes less than 17 minutes to entice a child to send an inappropriate picture to a stranger? I'm going to say that again. 17 minutes. If you didn't know, it's okay, you're not alone. Most parents don't, and neither do your kids. Including April, typical teenager. She's scrolling through her phone, looking at all the Instagram pictures, seeing the perfect couples, the perfect body, and the perfect lives. Every day, she dreams of falling in love and feeling like she belongs. One day, April gets a DM from a handsome stranger and tells her she's beautiful and that he wants to get to know her. The conversations with him make her feel so special, like she belongs just to him. One day, he sends her a picture of his perfect body and asks for one in return. Fingers trembling, nervous, and excited, she sends a picture, and just like that, he has her. The road to extortion begins. Every day, our children fall victim to online predators. We educate children about what's actually happening online, ways to stop the action, help bring predators to justice, and save lives. We've educated over 48,000 kids on grooming tactics used to lure them into a life that no one would ever choose. They learn they're not alone, they learn it's not their fault, and they learn there's a way out. Our children are being bombarded with pictures and DMs that they didn't ask for every day. In fact, Common Sense Media just did a piece of research last year letting us know that kids get an average of 267 DMs and pictures unsolicited every day. Our brains aren't wired to take in that much data, and neither are theirs. And I want you to know they've been battling this mostly alone, but not anymore. We invite you, all of you, to stand shoulder to shoulder with us in this fight and help move H.R. 1144 to the floor. And for the Senate, to hotline this bill by calling your representatives and asking them to support it. Because see, the story about April's true. After she attended our training, she learned she was being groomed, She stopped interacting with the predator and she called the police. Months later, she found out it was back at her school. And she asked if she could speak to me. She said, "Miss Jan, I had to come thank you for saving my life. Because if I hadn't taken your class, I know I wouldn't be here today." Because you see, when our kids and parents are educated, they take brand new life-saving actions. In fact, 61% of our kids after our training share what they learn with somebody. Do the math on the 48,000. It's a lot. 50% of them turn off their location settings and turn on their privacy settings. And the one that I'm most proud about, 57% of our kids walk away from a potentially dangerous situation. I'm going to say that again. 57%. Prevention, education saves lives. Today, Congress has an opportunity to educate more kids just like April, to assist law enforcement in catching the bad guys that are harming our children, and to provide much needed assistance to our survivors. I, along with the 48,000 children and parents we've had the opportunity to empower preventing this horrific crime, are asking Speaker Johnson to bring 1144 to the floor for a vote and for our senators to hotline the bill. And you can help. Have this conversation with your kids like their lives depended upon it, because it does. Yes. Thank you. And it's my honor to bring up warrior extraordinaire, Miss Alexandra Bailey.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me at the back? My name is Alexandra Bailey. I am the chair of the Foundation for Judicial Discretion, and I have had the pleasure and the privilege of surviving my own personal harms, which turned my heart towards survivors of all kind, but also to work at the state level to pass survivor justice relief acts, where we are working in states like Georgia, Oklahoma, North Carolina, and I have colleagues here from North Carolina today, so it only makes sense that the foundation would step up on 1144. I also happen to be from the great state of Louisiana. My family is from Tunica, Louisiana, for as far back as we can count. And the great state of Louisiana also has the privilege at this time of leading both the House and the Senate. And so today I call upon Speaker Johnson and Leader Scalise to remember our state motto: union, justice, confidence. When it comes to HR 1144 and combating human trafficking across this country, you can see that the union is with us. And we are fortunate to have Representative Smith leading us and Representative Mfume also leading us. The union agrees that we are not for the exploitation of human beings for sex or labor in this country or anywhere around the world, which is why the United States leads the fight against human trafficking, and we must maintain that mantle. Justice. Survivors deserve real justice. They deserve your help. I would argue they're entitled to it. I've traveled all across this country and visited prisons all across this country where I have met survivors who have spent their lives in a prison cell for surviving exploitation while the person who perpetrated that exploitation continues to walk free. In the state of Louisiana, I would remind my federal leaders, as of now, we've had 2,900 victims of human trafficking contact our service apparatus in the state of Louisiana alone. And we've had 2 prosecutions. Count them. 1, 2. That's coming from LDAA as of a hearing for the Survivor Justice Act for Louisiana as of last week. The federal government must take action on HR 1144 to ensure that the federal government is leading the way in what every single state in America should be doing. Survivors deserve housing. They deserve your help. They deserve not to be criminalized. They deserve to feel safe to come forward to help with the prosecution of the people who have harmed them. The people who stand behind me, they're my friends. I don't even know how they survived what they survived. But what I want to see is no one else survive what they survived. Yes. It is not okay. Every delay on this bill, and I have been present for the delays on this bill. Representative Smith, you must be a God-fearing man, because that patience could only come from God. But the patience must be over now. It's time to vote. It is time for Speaker Johnson to bring 1144 to the floor without edit or delay. And it is for Leader Scalise to turn around and hotline this bill through the Senate. And then I call on our president, President Trump, to sign this legislation into law so that we can get to work with a new and improved apparatus which is only justice for survivors. Thank you. And now I also have the incredible pleasure of introducing my colleague, Katrina Massey, who is the head of the Board of Directors, co-chair for PACT and Restore NYC.
Good afternoon, and thank you. Thank you, Representative Smith and Representative Mfume, for your support. I stand in strong support of the TVPA because it recognizes a truth that often goes unaddressed. Public safety is not just about responding to a crime. It is about preventing harm before it happens and ensuring that survivors have the support that they need to rebuild their lives. Trafficking doesn't occur in isolation. They thrive in environments where vulnerability goes unprotected, where poverty, instability, lack of education, and systematic gaps leave individuals at risk. If we're serious about public safety, we must be serious about prevention. Prevention means investing in education. Prevention means awareness and early intervention. It means equipping schools, communities, and frontline workers with the tools to recognize those warning signs well before exploitation begins. It's creating pathways so that vulnerable individuals are supported, not overlooked, long before they become victims. But prevention alone is not enough. For those of us who have been harmed, we understand that victim assistance is not optional. It is essential. Survivors of trafficking and exploitations face complex challenges, from physical trauma to mental health needs, housing instability, and barriers to employment. Without comprehensive trauma-informed services, we risk leaving survivors in cycles of vulnerability where exploitation can happen again and again and again. When we invest in victim assistance, safe housing, counseling, legal support, job training, we are not only helping individuals heal, we're strengthening communities. We're reducing recidivism. We are disrupting the very systems that allowed exploitation to begin and continue in the first place. TVPA supports this holistic approach. It acknowledges that real public safety is built through prevention, protection, and partnership. It aligns resources with the realities that survivors face and reinforces the idea that safety must be proactive, not reactive. This isn't a policy issue. It's a human issue. Behind every statistic is a person, a story, a life that deserves dignity, protection, and an opportunity to thrive. If we want safer communities, we must invest upstream. We must close the gaps that traffickers exploit. We must stand firmly with survivors like me and those that are behind me, not just in words, but in action. As a survivor of trafficking, I urge you to vote yes for TVPA, to recognize that prevention and victim assistance are not separate from public safety. They are the foundation of it. Thank you. And I would love to introduce Ms. Tanya Go, Senior Legislative Advisor of the National Center of Sexual Exploitation.
Good afternoon. There are moments when policy is simply not enacted for the sake of having policy. Instead, it serves a deeper purpose, addressing fundamental issues that impact society in profound ways. It becomes good policy when it is designed to protect the most vulnerable among us, like myself. I am Tanya Gould, Senior Legislative Advisor to Kweisi, the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, and survivor of domestic sex trafficking. My exploitation began as I exited my senior year of high school. My trafficker groomed me for about 4 months before putting me in situations I had no control over. Using coercion, he caused me to hope and dream of things I'd never thought possible for myself, while, in fact, he was setting me up for a lifetime of suffering and now finally healing. And now we know that when we look at ongoing issues and topics such as trafficking, pornography, CSAM, sexual addiction, and compulsivity, objectification, sexting, and all other forms of sexual assault and violence, protecting our most vulnerable from exposure to this violence becomes the line between vulnerability and safety. That is exactly what we are looking to do with the Trafficking Victims Protection Reauthorization Act. It interrupts the conditions that allow exploitation to exist in the very first place. Let's look at where trafficking actually begins. Many of you may think it begins at the moment of transaction, but no. Think of the grooming. Grooming is a quiet architecture of exploitation. Like in my story, it builds trust and it lowers defenses. All it needs is any kind of vulnerability long before anyone sees a crime. What this bill gets right is that it prioritizes prevention, education around grooming. Because when we teach young people, educators, parents, and communities how to recognize grooming, we are stopping the potential of trafficking before it forms. If you remove the grooming pipeline, you remove the foundation exploitation depends on. Now let's talk about where this is happening today. The marketplace has gone digital. Exploitation is no longer confined to physical spaces. It is happening through private messaging, gaming platforms, social media, and systems that scale access to vulnerability. Meta engineers know that their platforms drives grooming behaviors. So by investing in technology, informed prevention, and scalable training, the Act offers a proactive response in disrupting demand. Demand depends on access to vulnerable individuals, and vulnerability is created through grooming and amplified through technology. So when you cut off that access, you begin to collapse the system that feeds exploitation. That is what real demand reduction looks like. Dignity is a standard built upon a foundation that we all confront when we reflect on ourselves or just look in the mirror. Any system that allows grooming to persist without intervention undermines this very foundation. This bill, as it is, brings that alignment back. And that is why it deserves all of our full support. Thank you for your time.
What an amazing group of people who are fighting as never before to stop this heinous crime, to prevent it, to prosecute the bad guys, and to partner with everyone that will partner, and that starts with governments. So any questions that you might have, please raise those questions. And I do appreciate all of you being here. Yes, it's been a little bit long, but by design. There's so much to say, so much to digest. I mean, one of the things that Kweisi and I put into the bill, and we worked with the Frederick Douglass Foundation on this, was a whole area for, and just about everybody here, for housing. 180 million over 5 years for housing. I spoke at a conference recently, I hear this all the time, that the woman who got re-trafficked had no place to go. So we need to step up and ensure that there's the availability of safe housing for her or him, but many are women. We also named the situational awareness training after Frederick Douglass, which I think is extremely important because no one did more to stop slavery in this country and really around the world, but right here, than Frederick Douglass. And again, we're working with his great-great-grandson, who is just an amazing person in and of himself on all of these issues. So any questions, please, for any of us? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, for Congressman Smith. So you mentioned prevention education that
Yes.
you plan to implement in schools. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that will look like?
Sure,
How
sure. First of all, there will be targeted funding for grants to higher prevalence, higher risk populations. That might mean some of our cities. You know, that'll be done through a careful analysis where those grants should go. But there's also, and we got 3 strands and others who are here, they have done amazing curriculum that are age appropriate. They can speak to it if you'd like, that are camera ready. They're off the shelf. So we need to get those into every elementary and secondary school. It's all age appropriate, and it empowers the students as well as the teachers, the principals, the school board people, everyone, as to we need an all-out effort to not just mitigate, but to end this exploitation of our young people. And they will carry that. I like what was said earlier, that so many who get the training, Jan, I think you said it, convey that training and that information to their friends. What was that number, 60%, whatever? So it'll have a ripple effect, but really focusing, take a look at those curricula. They're just amazing, but maybe somebody else would want to speak to that as well. There she is, okay.
Hello, my name is Ashley Bryant, CEO and co-founder of 3 Strands Global Foundation. So to answer your question, what's really important is for us to be able to be age appropriate, as Congressman Smith said. And so our curriculum is called Protect. It is kindergarten through 12th grade, age appropriate. We've scaled it across the country to 18 different states, reached 1 million kids and over 150,000 adults, counselors, teachers, bus drivers, yard duty staff. And what Jan said earlier is super important. What we really need are those outcomes. Protect happens to be evidence-based. It's a really important component that we have done a random control trial on this curriculum and this training to make sure that we have the outcomes that we want. So that's just a little bit about the Protect program. Yeah.
Thank you so very much.
Can we do a picture with a picture with the Capitol in the background?
Say hi. I'm Helen from Abigail used to work with me. So great.
She's still on the hill,
Yeah, she's been Mexican now. I lived with her last night.